tardies should a student get before detention? I would say I think the 3 tardies before detention, I think that's a pretty good number. Because there are things that happen that are outside of students' controls. Like maybe they just have a problem with their locker, or maybe they drop stuff in the hallway, or they really gotta go to the bathroom, stuff like that. Sometimes things happen, so you shouldn't get a detention right away for like the first one. However, when you get to like that number 3, then it starts to be something that's sort of in your control a little bit more, I think. So I think that's why 3 is kind of a good number for that.
Thank you. How can students be better at not being late?
Okay, so I think it just kind of comes down to being prepared, planning ahead, type of thing. Knowing the school, knowing where your classes are, knowing what you need to bring with you from your locker, how much time is between classes. Like, all right, well, I know I'm going to these classes and they're close together and my locker is far away. I better bring my stuff for both classes because I'm not going to have time to go back and forth to my locker. So kind of thinking ahead, being prepared is kind of the best way to avoid being tardy.
Thanks. And how do you think you can convince students to not be late? Like give them motivation to hurry up in the hallway?
Yeah, well, I think for some students, I think that detention piece is a pretty good way to inspire people to be on time, because some kids don't want to get in trouble and get that detention. We've did some celebrations and things last year for being on time and things like that. So those celebration days that we have, and being able to do that and meet the expectations was nice. So like we have a tardy celebration. Tardies, you get to celebrate with your friends. That's fun. And you get to the tardies and miss out. It's kind of a bummer. So I think those are good ways to kind of inspire the kids to make sure that they are on time. Well, I think the biggest reason why I think students are late to class is the social aspect, talking to friends. Even before all this stuff happens, people like hang out with their friends, they like to talk to them, they like to see them, especially when they don't always have class together. And I'm sure when we get back in the building and everyone gets back here, I think there's going to be even more of that, because it's been so long since you've been together. You guys are going to be happy to see your friends face to face and want to talk and just kind of catch up and stuff. So there'll definitely be some of that, like rushing to get to class at the last second because you've been busy socializing with your friends. And it's good to socialize, it's good to have friendships. It's just kind of balancing that out, right? It's part of life, is learning how to balance that, I think.
How it affects students? That's a good question. So I would say tardiness affects students first off because they miss usually announcements and important information is at the beginning of class. So if you miss those even the first couple minutes, you're missing those announcements, you're missing directions, you're missing warm-ups possibly, you're missing the agenda, and you're kind of from there going to be out of the loop then. So you don't really know what's going on for the rest of the class, and then you have to ask questions in order to kind of get caught up. And I think it would also kind of result in some stress. At least if I was the student, I would be a little stressed out because now I don't know what's going on. All right. We've usually gone by, at least in my class, we've gone by 3. I personally in my class would do 3 per trimester. If there was more frequent tardies with a student, there might need to be kind of a different layout with other teachers. So if he or she was late to math and science often, then maybe those 2 teachers could figure out a plan for that student. But I usually do 3 per trimester. And usually after the second one, I'll talk to the student and see what the problem is. If they're late because they aren't packing up quick enough, if they're talking to friends in the hallway and not getting to class on time. So I would usually do about 3 per trimester, depending on the situation.
Hey, thank you. Okay. How do you think students can improve on being not late?
Okay, good question. I think they can improve on their tardiness or being on time. Right off the bat at the beginning of the year, kind of map out where your classes are. Figure out when you're going to stop at your locker, because that's also a big thing is students don't need to stop at their locker after every class period. And that does take some time. So I think kind of mapping out, looking at your schedule, seeing when is the most appropriate time to stop at my locker, and knowing where your classes are. The other thing is to just communicate with teachers. So I know you guys, I know Nathaniel, you know where my classroom is, but if you're coming from like Mr. Longley's room and you have to get to my room, it's a little bit of a walk. So kind of just communicating that with your teachers so that they know where you're going and where you're coming from to kind of, because if a student talks to me and says, you know, I'm coming from a further area of building, then I would cut them a little bit more slack. But I think kind of knowing where your classes are, mapping out and scheduling your locker times would be a good start.
How do you think you can motivate students to not be tardy?
That's a good question. So I used to, and at some point I'll bring this back once we're back in person and can safely be in school. I use a ticket system. So basically I have a roll of tickets and when students participate, when they do good things in the classroom, if they ask a good question, I give them tickets. And at the end of the week, every Friday, I pick names and I give students candy. So I think that using some type of system like that could help. And giving them the tickets and they have a chance to win something by the end of the week. And I think, you know, just kind of discussing the pros and cons of being tardy or not being tardy and discussing, you know, showing grades and how that affects your grades, I think could motivate students if they are grade driven. But I think that ticket system is something that tends to work. I also think, if I can say one more thing, sorry guys, talking about kind of the real world situations, and if you're late to a job interview, kind of just going through what happens in the real world when you're an adult. So if you have an interview for a job and you are late to that, what might happen? Or if you're late to, you already have your job and you're late to work, or you don't pay your bills on time. Things like that, when you are an adult, there is a bigger consequence than when you're a student. So I think that would help as well.
Thank you. The next and final question is, I think you already answered a few of it, but what are some reasons you think students are tardy?
Of why they're tardy? Yeah, so I mean, I think the locker situation is a big thing, and I think that's a big thing for sixth grade more so. They don't know necessarily how to organize their schedule. And most of the sixth grade classes are in the sixth grade hallway. So if they're coming to my room in the seventh grade hallway or the art room or going to PE, they kind of need to navigate their locker situation. I think traveling and trying to get to your class in 3 minutes is sometimes a little bit difficult. Like I mentioned, if you're going from Mr. Longley's room to my room or the art room, that could be another reason. Now we have 5 minutes. I don't know if that's going to stay. So it's a little bit more time. And then I also think the biggest reason why students are late is talking in the hallway and stopping and seeing friends, which is fine. But you definitely need to keep an eye on your time so that you can get to class. I think those are probably the main things. Even not packing up or not getting your stuff together when your teacher tells you to, and sometimes you're able to have a pass, but I'd say those are your
Tardiness. Okay. So tardiness can affect you in a couple different ways, right? So like if you're tardy to class, sometimes you miss the beginning of class, so you might miss like the teacher's instructions and what you're supposed to do, right? If you're tardy to school in general, like you're kind of like just not ready for the day, right? You're kind of like always playing catch up during the day. So it can affect your mood, it can affect your grades, all kinds of things.
How can students improve on staying on time? I'm going. Yeah.
Okay, so from being late, well, I guess you can improve on staying on time, let's say to get to school on time by making sure you set your alarm early enough in the morning, go to bed at a good time so you get a good night's sleep, right? Maybe prepare your stuff at night so that you're ready to go, like put your clothes out that you need and like get your lunch ready, that kind of stuff the night before so you're ready to go in the morning. Set an alarm, obviously, and give yourself enough time to get ready. And also like right now through Zoom, I think a lot of kids are, in order to not be late, like as soon as your other class ends, you sign into your next one. So you're ready, you're already there when the teacher opens the class. Or set an alarm to make sure that it reminds you to go back to class, especially after lunch, so that you're on time. Like set an alarm on your phone. Those are all good ways to do it.
How do you think you can motivate students to not be late?
Okay. Well, I think there's a couple different ways. First of all, if you're on time, it just feels better because then you're not like feeling like you have to catch up, right? So it's I think in a way, if you get used to being on time, there's like some self-motivation that happens, right? You're motivated to continue being on time because it just feels better when you're on time. And that you don't feel like you're lost when you get to class. Another way though, maybe teachers could motivate would be like, maybe like give rewards for kids who show up on time all the time, some kind of reward, or maybe if you show up on time, like some kind of a reward, like maybe like a free homework pass, or you get to leave a couple minutes early because you were on time, something like that would be a good way to promote it. Also in the school, when we're in the building, I don't know if you guys remember, like last year we would have like the celebrations, right? Like Mr. Sam would run the celebrations. So like I think we had a tardiness one. So when we get back in the building, we'll probably do something like that again. Is there one more question?
Yeah, one more question. What are some reasons you think students are tardy?
Well, I think it's different. Again, it's different when we're in the building and when we're not. On Zoom, I think kids are tardy because I think they're home and they get distracted and they lose track of time, right? When we're in the building, I think kids are tardy to school because they oversleep sometimes. But they're tardy to class because maybe they're like spending too much time in the hallway, like talking to their friends or getting distracted and not making it to the class on time. Because I think there is a lot, you guys do have actually a lot of time to get from class to class. And sometimes you get caught up like, talking to friends or whatever, and that's what happens. So it's just about being a little more disciplined about it, that's all.